When it comes to learning difficulties like dyslexia, lasting change starts with the right approach. At the Morris Center, we go beyond traditional tutoring, offering comprehensive, evidence-based programs that retrain the brain for lifelong success. With over 35 years of experience, we've helped thousands of clients overcome learning challenges in just months, not years. Find out how we can help your child succeed at themorriscenter.com.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions, from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Have you ever wondered how you know the statistics that homeschool kids do well academically? Or what about socialization? Did you know homeschool kids excel at socialization, often above their peers? Where did we get this research? Well, today I have a special guest I want you to meet. You'll learn about the wonderful organization that's goal it is to share the truth about homeschooling, and they have the receipts to prove it. This is episode 559, and you can find today's show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Our topic today is Homeschooling Uncovered, Research, Funding, and Surprising Facts. Hey friends, and welcome. My name is Felice Gerwitz, and this is an episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms. Today, I am going to introduce to you someone that I would like you to meet and has a lot to do with homeschooling and research, and I hope that he becomes a dear friend of yours soon. This is Dr. Brian Ray with Nheri, and it is an organization that he's going to explain a little bit more about, but it's the National Home Education Research Institute. Welcome, Dr. Ray.
Thank you, Felice. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to explain to our audience who kind of knows me at this point, and they know I'm a little bit, let's see, how can I talk about myself in a kind way? I kind of beat to a different drummer. And so I got an email today from Dr. Brian Ray, and I've supported his work in the past. And so I said, you know what, we need to get the word out. So I emailed him and I said, would you be interested in being on my podcast? And he said, sure, let's do it today. I can't do it next week because I'm busy, and the week after is too long. And I really wanted to get the word out. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and then a little bit about your homeschool journey, which sounds very similar to mine.
Yeah, one of the things that's really fun about this, Felice, we just figured out we're about almost exactly the same generation.
Yes.
So, and we're on a similar page on a lot of things. So you go way back in the time machine. Betsy and I got married over 45 years ago, and she was working to be a certified teacher. I already had a master's degree in zoology. And then I thought, I don't want to be in a lab all my life. And I've loved teaching ever since I was young. When I was in high school, I taught children at a nearby elementary school. I thought, why not get a teaching degree? So I did. I taught for a few years in junior high school biology. And then I thought, I need another challenge. So I went to Oregon State University to work on a PhD in science education. While there, Felice, we were starting to have children of our own. And they get, they're 1 year old, and they're 2 years old, and they're 3 years old. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, in the advanced Western civilization and all over the world, people think, well, I just sent them to school, right? Well, about that same exact time, while I was at Oregon State University, I met some people who wanted help teaching their children. It turns out they were basically hippie homeschoolers.
Oh,
but
fun.
We didn't have that term, Felice. If you go back and think about it, we didn't
No.
know what that was called. So I also wanted to look into research on, well, what is this? Is there any research on it? There was almost none at the time. So this is back before 1985. And I started an annotated bibliography. To this day, I call it get this, home-centered learning annotated bibliography, because that's what it was, home-centered learning. And anyway, all this is happening at the same time, the academic interest and the family interest. And Betsy and I just never stopped homeschooling. They were born and we never quit home educating them. And they never went away to institutional schools during what we call K through 12. And there
Hmm.
are 8 of them, and we loved it. And all this while, I'm starting to do research on homeschooling. I taught at some universities and colleges. 1985, I started the Journal of Homeschool Researcher. 1990, a few other men and I started this nonprofit National Home Education Research Institute. So it's 35 years old,
Wow.
Elise, and the journal's 40 years old. So the Bible says don't brag about yourself. So I'm not. I'm going to just tell people go on the internet, clear your cookies, and search homeschool space research. And after the ads, see what comes up #1 in the world. And
It's wonderful.
you'll find the research institute. So it's been really, really fun. It's been engaging. It's been a lot of work, but I love doing research and I like meeting people and I like studying homeschoolers and I like philosophy and theology and politics and all of that. And you get to do all of that when you study homeschoolers.
And it's wonderful because your studies have really been groundbreaking. And I think I ran across information about you, I think at one of the homeschool conferences, probably one of the bigger ones. And that's when I said, this is really good. And I like to read. We did it with our books. Like I was the one reading the science abstracts and actually considered those fun.
Yeah,
So,
yep,
so that's why I
yep.
like reading your work, you know. But you know, you send out this heartfelt plea. But before we get to that, you know, tell us a little bit about some of the research that people may have heard about that
Sure.
you've done.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, all the way back to 1990, that's 35 years ago. I can hardly think
Wow.
about it. But we did the first, I should say, I did, Nheri did the first big nationwide study where we got at children's academic achievement test scores. That's a whole philosophical discussion because
Right.
in some ways that's not that important, but in the world, that's the currency, right? How are
Right.
they doing academically? So we got at the academic achievement and we got at demographics of the families and why do you homeschool and all kinds of things. And friends at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and I, they were a big help in that study, a big, big help.
Wonderful.
That hit the news. That hit the news, and it was a major thing. That was the first study ever of its kind, and it really set the tone for what the media, in a way, and the general public thinks about in terms of research on homeschooling. And I'd say today, and I don't want to exaggerate, but most Americans will say, yeah, homeschool kids, they do pretty good. They do better than average when it
Hmm.
comes to educational outcomes. And then we also had, you know this, we then had the question, yeah, but okay, so you don't have to be a government certified teacher to teach your children to read, write, and do arithmetic. And you don't have to have a 4-year degree in education to teach a child that the letter A has 3 sounds, a, aw. Okay, we'll admit that. But then they want to know, but what about socialization?
Right.
So I've done some studies that get at that in some ways, and I interact with researchers all over the world who get at that. So now it's almost like, hey, the majority of studies show that home educated children do better, statistically better, in terms of their social and emotional development than those who are in institutional schools. So now that is starting to get into the consciousness of the general public.
Because the
It's
kids are modeling the adults that they're around rather than,
absolutely,
yeah. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And they
So
don't have,
it's,
people will say, yeah, yeah, people will say, but don't they have to be bullied and don't they have to hear foul language and don't they have to be mistreated by teachers to learn how to be strong adults? No, they don't.
yeah.
They get enough of that in their families
Well,
anyway, you
You're
know?
right. If they're in a big family, right? Well, and
Yeah, yeah.
you know, everybody knows their pecking order.
It's human nature. It's human nature.
Exactly. And as I tell parents, you know, who have said to me, and my children have accused me of this, they go, Mom, you'd put us in a bubble. I said, absolutely. I would absolutely put you in a bubble if I could, you know, complete with, you know, bubble wrap and everything else. But you can't always protect your children, but we
You
can
can.
during the formative years. And I say to parents who have asked me and, you know, questioned me about it, I said, well, do you choose your friends? Do you select your friends? Do you hang out with people that you would not want to be associated with? Of course not. But
Hmm.
the standard is different when it's a child. And so that brings us to today and your research that you're currently doing and where you're hitting a little bit of a wall. So
Yeah.
what are you currently working on?
So in this study, and by the way, let's come back to another really important study if you
Okay.
have time.
Sure,
Elise,
absolutely.
want to come back to that. So right now we are working on the next iteration of something like that big nationwide study I mentioned from 1990. Okay, so we've done a few, but remember that was 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And over and over and over, if anybody in the homeschool world reads the news, you can see that certain attacks on the freedom and responsibility of parents to be able to home educate their children constantly arise.
Oh my
It
gosh,
just
there is.
happens, you know. There are I don't really like labels, but sometimes labels are quick. There are statists out there are socialists out there are neo-Marxists out there who are against the concept, the philosophy, the worldview that says that parents have the duty and responsibility to raise their children and educate them. So they always are wanting to control. Now, what am I getting at? So we have in the different states, we have homeschool organizations that promote and defend homeschool freedom, so to speak. Well, those lobbyists always need data and information because policymakers, legislators, they
They
want
want to see it, right?
they
They want
want
their
empirical evidence. Yeah,
right.
yeah. So if you tell them, well, we have these data from 15 years ago, they kind of
Yeah,
laugh at
yeah, yeah. They need it
you. And
currently.
yeah, in the
Yeah.
modern world with the internet, everything has to be new, 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 new. So we are doing a new big nationwide study where we will be collecting achievement test scores and other important elements related to how are the children doing academically and maybe what explains that. So it's a brand new big study. And when you do research like this, you want researchers need a good or high response rate so that the
Mm,
study is more believable, generalizable,
right.
valid, and reliable. Yeah. So we need, I'll be blunt, we need money to do research. Okay. We do not get government tax dollar grants. So it's
Which is a good
it's
thing, or you'd
individuals.
probably be, in trouble with
There,
with the current flavor
oh,
out there. Yeah. If
there
anybody's
are
on,
so many more, there are
oh
so many more
gosh.
controls. We don't
Yeah.
in many ways
And
we
that,
don't want
right,
tax.
that frees you up, yeah, to really do a good job. And how are you finding, because I know I've been asked about surveys as a homeschool mom, and you kind of don't always want to give the information.
Yes.
So are
Yeah.
you finding obstacles with parents, or how do you go about collecting this information?
Yeah. So what happens is that when we publicize the study, first of all, those who know Nheri, where I work,
Right.
trust us. Uh, Homeschool families generally trust the homeschool organizations like the statewide homeschool organizations like
Correct.
FPEA in Florida or
Right.
NCHE in North Carolina or Ocean in Oregon.
Right.
Homeschoolers trust those people. And if they trust me, the researcher, and they endorse what we're doing, that helps people trust us.
Right.
And we always follow the basic protocols of anonymity and confidentiality. We are not asking for children's names. We're not asking for your name. So, we follow strict research guidelines to protect everybody's privacy. And I know, I mean, I'm a big privacy guy myself, and I know
Right.
that there's a kind of a push and a pull. But if you want policymakers and legislators and judges and the media to have good, solid information, you got to help us and participate. That's how it works.
Right.
If you don't participate, here's another way to look at this, Felice. If you don't participate and work with somebody you trust, like Nheri or your state organization, some other professor or doctoral student is going to find a way to study you, and he or she might have a worldview that is very different from what you believe in. And worldview of every researcher and every think tank
Mm-hmm.
biases them in what questions they ask, how they ask questions, and in a really big time, Felice, once they have the data, how they present it to the public, how they present it to the media. So you really, really if you're a homeschool family, you want people doing research whose worldview you trust. I mean, I'll just be simple about it, you know.
Yeah. And it's also important to support things. I'm working on a podcast that should go out Monday for my other podcast that I host, A Few Minutes with God, and it was a sermon I heard by our pastor who was talking about faith and saying, so what are you doing about it? What
Mm,
you have faith, you believe in the
yeah.
Lord. Okay, so what are your actionable points? And he
Yes.
reiterated that today. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do, I always tell this pastor, he gives me these one-liners that spur ideas for podcasts. And he goes, really? I do? But so that's the topic for Monday for A Few Minutes with God is faith in action. And so when I got your email, and one of these people that I better do it now, I'm going to forget, and I'm going to read a line of it. He goes, the challenge to make the study statistically valid and robust, we need to boost participation rates, and that takes money. We need to raise $10,000 immediately to fund incentives and outreach. Would you take 3 minutes now to give 5, 10, or even $1,000?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
donated more than 10, but less than 1,000. But I think it's so important, and so I'll have the links in the podcast notes. But it's going to be at Nheri, NEHERI.org/donate. And this is, I don't think in the 500 and whatever number of podcasts I've done that I've ever had anybody on to solicit donations. Okay. But this is something that I am very passionate about. And I followed Dr. Ray's work for years and years and years. And I think this is really worthwhile. So I was really happy that I got the email today, donated, and am now interviewing you. So this is Friday and it will go out Monday.
All right. All
So,
right.
and even if, they miss, if they're hearing this in a year from now, you're still willing to take donations,
We're
I'm
still
sure.
here.
Yeah, they're
You
still
know,
going to be.
could I toss something in there, Felice? And first
Sure,
of all, thank you very much for, promoting this.
sure.
Almost nobody wants to talk about money, but I wanted, I'm not real good at, I'm not good at fundraising. I never have been. I'm the
Hmm.
president of Nheri. I'd rather do my research, just do my research and write. But here's what I want to remind people. There are a lot of people who are, say, 50 and older in the homeschool world. They know a lot about some of these things like Nheri and the history. But many of the younger people just say, oh, wow, everybody knows homeschool children on average do well academically. Everybody knows, yeah, we've heard those statistics, but they don't have a clue from where they came. So I just
Right.
want to really encourage people in their late 20s and 30s and 40s to say, wait a minute, we have that whole history that came before us, like Felice and others. And these
Right.
studies were extremely important in the historical foundational way that the public and legislators see and understand homeschooling and the freedom to do it. And we still need these studies. I stay in touch with these homeschool leader lobbyists, and they tell me over and over, Brian, we need data today. We need
Yeah.
new data. We still need these studies, even if people think, oh, yeah, we just know it's all what's real. They need new data. So I'm trying to get better explaining that and pushing people a little bit. Say,
But people,
hey,
yeah,
folks,
they
yeah,
don't remember that we didn't go out during the day with our kids, because
yes,
if you had to take a child, let's say, to the doctor and get a prescription, which I am not big on any of that, but your kid has an ear infection and whatever, and so you're at the pharmacist and they want to know why your kids are there, and I'm like, I'm at the pharmacy getting medicine, so
yep,
if you want to go to the grocery store, you have to go get groceries, and you took your kids, you had to spend all this time, like they looked at you like, well, why are your children not in school?
yes,
So
yeah,
you had to explain everything. And I started in 86, and really I wasn't really a pioneer because you guys had already set the foundation, with a lot of people had gone, there were people who've gone to jail, because they decided to
yes.
homeschool. And what is that state now? I can't recall. Just recently was in the news where the legislature on the state level passed a law that said they needed to oversee the curriculum. I think they're trying to fight it in court.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, so
Do
I'm
you
glad you
remember
brought
what state? I don't remember.
Illinois and
Illinois.
Connecticut. I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up, Felice, because a lot of our younger colleagues in the homeschool world, they think, oh, it's all over, it's all free.
No,
It's
it's not.
free. I want to remind people, it was just a few years ago, Elizabeth Bartlett, professor, said, this is what she called for, a presumptive ban on homeschooling. That means you would not be able to homeschool. You, mom or dad, who are in your 20s or 30s, you have to go to the government, kind of like bow and say, please, may I homeschool? And this is why. You'd have to make the case for it. So this thinking has not gone away. And that's part of why we still need empirical evidence and good, solid studies. It's a constant battle, and it's really important. And I'm just not trying to, hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm fear mongering, but that's the mentality of some people who
I
want
think
to control
I
you.
don't think you are, because we were following this in the news, and I'm on X, but I don't have a huge account on there. And I posted, I said, we need somebody with an account like in the millions, that's got 1 million followers, who needs to start posting information on our senators, who we need to call, because we used to do this with homeschooling. We
Yes,
all had
yes,
these numbers that were sent to us, and we started calling. We
yes.
did this in Florida. And all of a sudden, when they see their constituents and everyone else who's calling, they finally start, taking note of what you're doing. And so somebody did it on their own. And I was just like so thankful and praising God that they
Yay.
did. And so, like every day, and it only took like 3 days of calling, you know, different representatives in Congress or whatever. And it's one of the girls that I follow. And I subscribe to her. Not that I really get anything out of it, but I think that's where, I think it's $3 a month. So, even if you only have $2 or $3, I'm sure Dr. Ray would be happy to take it, and just to help support something that is really important. Our entire network is free. People can listen to any of our podcasts. I have lots of great podcasters on the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. And I always wanted that model where, I know when we first started podcasting, I mean, everybody has a podcast now. And I like all these important people that are on TV. I'm like, why do you have podcasts? This is our
Mm-hmm,
space.
mm-hmm.
But you don't have to explain what it is anymore. And I remember going to conference and having young mommies hand me their phone and say, well, how much does it cost? And can you get the app on here for me? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you have the app built in. Here it is. And this is what you do. And you type this in and you get it for free. And they couldn't believe it. So there are so many things that I'm so happy to bring to the forefront for other people who maybe have not heard of you, and just are not sure of what you do at Nheri, and now they've seen you. Give us a little bit of a background to the background that you're standing in front of now. Now, Dr. A told
Yeah.
me, he goes,
Well,
I've been out bear hunting, and I'm going,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a man's man here.
There's
So
a real picture back there, because if I
yes,
didn't have the picture, the virtual background, you would see an ugly wall with a piece of paper on it. So this
right.
this is a picture of from Northeast Oregon, where my buddies and I hunt elk and bear. So it's way up in the Northeast. If anybody wants to look it up, it's around the Eagle Cap Wilderness area. So it's just gorgeous. It's rugged. It's steep. Uh,
Beautiful.
you typically go from the top of the ridge down about a 2,000-foot descent, and then you try to pack your meat back up. So I'm
Wow,
just happy God has kept me healthy. I can still do that, and that's what it is. But
that's
could I mention
wonderful.
that other study real quick, Felice?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yes.
let me get examples. I need to be better at giving examples of why we do what we do and why this is important, the research.
Well, we may have to just have you back on another time, because
Yeah,
I
there's
did
so
not let you
much.
collect your thoughts. I
Yeah,
sent you an
and
email.
the next time,
Yeah.
Felice, we will not try to raise money blatantly. We'll just talk about research. How's that?
Okay,
Okay,
wonderful.
but I do know that it was about 10 years ago, a case came up in California where a family allegedly or did do some bad things to their children. Okay. Now, that's evil and you don't want it. However, you don't punish the entire homeschool community because one family did some bad things.
Right.
And at the time, I won't make the quotes, but the HSLDA president said basically, Brian, without that research, we're not sure we would have won. Okay. Now, it's not about me, it's about the value of honest, real research.
Because
Another case,
your stuff's peer reviewed. Let's go back, right?
yeah,
I mean,
it's
you don't
it's
just
peer
throw
reviewed.
this,
Yeah,
you don't throw this out there without having it, looked at by
Exactly.
others. Because if there's a, it's like anything that we do, we're so scrutinized, right?
Yes.
And people, if there's any way that anybody could say this is not right, they would do it. So
Oh, absolutely.
you have to, really dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure
Absolutely,
everything
Felice.
is,
In
so I
this
just want,
world,
right,
if I come across in any way positive without backing it up, I'm going to be ferociously attacked.
right.
So
And you've done this a while. So,
done this a while. So if you,
yeah.
this is kind of fun. This is also what God did. A few years back, I wrote a review of research on homeschooling, only peer-reviewed research, and it got published in a peer-reviewed journal. In the 20-year history of that journal, Felice, this is the most read, most downloaded article ever.
Wow.
And this is not a journal on homeschooling. And I looked at it the other day. It was
And
some,
what
I mean,
was the topic? What was the
it
topic?
was a systematic review of research on homeschooling in
Okay.
the Journal of School Choice. And I don't remember the exact numbers right now, but it was something like this article has been viewed something like 60,000 something times. The top viewed article. The next most viewed article is like 1/5 of that number of views. And guess what? It is. It's another one on homeschooling by God's providence, also by us and me at Nheri, and it's on abuse and neglect.
Mm.
People care about this topic, and that research has a huge impact on the public's view and what happens in legislature. So I'll send you those links so that you can see them, and
Okay,
people can
good.
say,
Well,
"Oh, well, that's
we can put that in the show notes as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So if you're listening on a smartphone, what you can do is just when you look at your app, just scroll down and it has the show notes right there. So you can actually look at your phone and just click on the links and we'll have all of that on there. So
yeah,
when you send it
yeah."
to me before Monday, so I can get it up on the. But I think it's kind of great that you're getting introduced to the audience, and as a vintage homeschool moms, I feel like this is my time to mentor. You want to do all of these great things when you're in the weeds and you're working with your kids, and you just don't have time. And so I applaud all the young moms out there now who are
Eh,
podcasting and sharing information, but I feel like, this is something that I have supported for many, many years. And I would like, our audience to hear about it and to kind of get a flavor for what you do. And like you said, people are, well, of course, homeschooling should be legal in all 50 states. And of course, but HSLDA did so much work in that area too. That's another worthwhile group to look into. So, not necessarily having to spend a lot of money, but just, if you can afford a little bit for this endeavor. And Dr. Ray did not ask to be on my show. I, emailed him and said, well, let's just do it now. So we are. Any last words for our audience about, like I know we have a lot that we want to cover. We'll do some of it
yeah.
in another show, but just
I
something.
just yeah, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Take a look at it. We'll send a couple links, and I would like everybody's younger to me now, but I would just
Mhm.
like all the younger homeschool moms and dads to think historically, how did we get to this place where home-based education was essentially extinct by the 1970s in the United States to now over 3 million homeschooled children, Felice.
Wow. Wow.
And I
Wonderful.
want to give some credit to Mike Ferris, one of the
Right.
first founders of HSLDA. He said way back in about 1989, he said we need parents with their children to go meet their legislators, and we need
Hmm.
good, solid research. Mike was very prophetic,
Right.
and we have good, solid research. And I think we should all be thankful that God, under his providential hand, has done that. And we need more, and we need to keep doing it. So I just want to thank people for listening and try to think historically and realize the importance of all these things. And I think it'd be great for us to get back and talk about a
We
couple of
will.
specific studies and get into the nitty gritty. And I think the parents need to have their like 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds who are interested in science and scientific methods listen to that podcast, Felice, because I can explain how research works.
That would be great. That would be wonderful. Well, then we'll do that. We'll book you as soon as we end this show. I'll get you on the books and we'll
All right.
schedule it and we'll get it
Alrighty.
going. All right. Well,
Alrighty.
thank you so much. God bless Dr. Ray.
Take care. Bye.
Well, friends, there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms. You can find the show notes at our website. Look for episode 559, Homeschooling Uncovered, Research, Funding, and Surprising Facts. Take care, everybody. God bless, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.